Good afternoon, everyone. Allison Schaberg here, Consolidated Planning Group. We are happy to be back with you. I've got 12 o'clock straight up, so we're going to get started. Today's webinar is being recorded. And so after today's webinar, you will get an email with the recording as well as a copy of today's slides. So everybody is in a webinar status, so we can't see you and we can't hear you, but we do know you're there. And we, as always, we want this to be as interactive as possible. We want to answer as many questions as we can as possible today. So Allison Schaberg, Consolidated Planning Group, and I am super excited to be here with Michelle Goldberg, attorney Michelle Goldberg of the law office of Michelle Goldberg out of the greater Houston area. She's kind of a legend around the Houston area. So some of you may have heard of her, may have worked with her in the past. So today is really going to be a little bit more conversational. If you've attended our webinars in the past, really what we really try to do is empower parents with children with disabilities or learning differences, and empower them with the tools and resources that they need to help navigate the complex maze of planning for special needs. So today what we're talking about is the 4 things that you need to know about protecting your child with special needs. If you've attended webinars with us in the past, you may know that we have a YouTube channel. All of these webinars that we've done in the past and all of the topics that we talk about, most everything that we talk about in the special needs community could have its own 1-hour webinar topic itself because there's so many convoluted things and ins and outs of it. So if there is a topic that we touch on a little bit, but we don't go deep and wide today, just know that that topic, there is a 1-hour webinar out there on our YouTube channel that you can check out. So Michelle, can you just share with us a little bit about yourself, how long you've been practicing, and just welcome. Talk to us about you for a second.
Well, thank you. I've been practicing for about 20, this is going into my 27th year, and I am a probate attorney. So people know what probate is. Go take a will, have your will admitted to probate. I do estate planning, a lot of guardianships, and a special focus in my practice. And really my heart is in my long-term special needs planning for the special needs families. And I call it long-term special needs planning, Allison, because I think that the families need exactly what you're doing. So we talk about guardianship, which is a legal issue, or powers of attorney, which we'll get to, about getting the child, their child, soon to be adult child or already adult child, eligible for government benefits. But they also need to look at their long-term financial plan, how to plan for themselves, for retirement, for their special needs child who will be dependent for life, for their other kids, and how we do estate planning to make that work for them and maintain their child's eligibility for government benefits. So I call it long-term special needs planning. There's some more components to it, but that's what I do.
Awesome, Michelle. Thank you for sharing that. And we are going to go deeper because, Michelle, there's a lot of confusion on what the lines are. What is it that we do? What is it that you do? Why do I need both? And there's confusion on that. So we are going to clarify that for everybody today. So we've got our contact information here, and we're going to put our contact information up again at the end today. And then of course we have I'll go ahead and let you go with this, is we have to do this.
Well, I can read the whole thing, but what it's saying, everybody, is I'm not giving individual legal advice. This is general information. Don't count it as legal advice. There's no attorney-client privilege here. No attorney-client connection here. So if you have a legal question or you'd like me to help you with anything or you want to discuss anything, call my office individually, and then we can set up an attorney-client relationship, and I can answer the specific questions for your loved one. But this is just general information.
Always some of those little housekeeping items. So we're talking about the 4 things that you need to know. So the first thing that we're going to talk about, the number 1, is what is Medicaid and why is it important? So Michelle, I'm going to let you open a little bit with that on, one of the things we always talk about is eligibility and future eligibility. So do you want to talk about this for just a second for us?
Yes. So I really, I don't want to say push my clients, but I really emphasize to all of my special needs clients that they've got to get the child eligible for Medicaid. And I'll tell you why. And a lot of my clients say, I don't need it. I work for one of the oil companies. I work in the medical center here in Houston. We have great benefits. I can have lifetime benefits for my child. That's fine. Get the Medicaid. You can have the Medicaid and your private insurance, but there's misconceptions about Medicaid. So first of all, Medicaid is comprehensive medical insurance and it's free. So one can have your private policy, which is preferable because you might have a better choice of providers, and or just it's your private policy. So you have your private policy and Medicaid can be the copay. The other benefits of Medicaid, which are so important, is Medicaid pays for a lot of programs. When your child is done with special education and if your child needs something to do every day and depending on his functionality, but maybe needs to go at a sheltered workshop or some other sort of program, many of them are covered by Medicaid. Your child has to be on Medicaid. And if your child is on Medicaid and the program is Medicaid certified, the program can bill Medicaid for your child's participation. It's going to make a big difference in your finances for the year when you're figuring out what you need for what. Medicaid also covers a lot of housing. So if and when the time comes that you need to look at residential placement for your child, whether it's a group home or a larger facility, once again, if it's a Medicaid certified facility and your child is on Medicaid, then the facility can bill for your child's place at the home. So those are the main reasons to really make sure that you've got Medicaid. Medicaid also pays for prescriptions. So a lot of the kids that are on multiple prescriptions are on very high dollar prescriptions, which many of them are. You can have your private insurance and then Medicaid can pick up the copay.
And in Medicaid is always the last payer, it's the last payer. But a lot of times what happens is Medicaid swoons in and eats that deductible. It pays that deductible. Sometimes there's programs through Medicaid HIP, for instance, which will be a health insurance reimbursement for the private health insurance that you're having through your employer that your child is covered through. So there's a lot of reasons to do it. But you hit the nail right on the head when you said, I talk to people say, hey, listen, we're affluent. We've got millions of dollars sitting in a trust. We fully have, taken care of our child's care all these years, and we're not going to stop anytime soon. So why do I even need Medicaid? And the answer is the waivers and the requirement of the Medicaid eligibility, number one, and number two, the laws could change. So even though we have our adult child with disabilities on our group health insurance, and as it stands right now, we can continue to keep them on many plans past age 26. Things could change with that in the future, and so that is something also to keep in mind. So we've got a couple of things in the chat box, and this is a good question that comes up all the time. Why would you keep insurance if you qualify for Medicaid? And I'm a parent of two kids with special needs, and I've got one that is Medicaid, Medicare, and has private insurance. And so why would I keep the private insurance? The private insurance gives me freedom of choice. I have a kid with extraordinary diagnoses and weird facilities all across the country, and very few facilities that serve that particular disability and things like that. When we have kids with rare disorders or things like that, basically I want to see who I want to see. I want to go where I want to go. And if it's not in Texas and I want to get on a plane and I want to go to Cleveland, or I want to go somewhere else, or wherever I want to go, I want to have the freedom and the flexibility to see the specialists that I want to see. Sometimes from a Medicaid perspective, you are limited in the physicians that will accept Medicaid, and some of the physicians that you once had or you have always had and you have a wonderful relationship, namely some of these specialty clinics, will not accept your Medicaid. So to me, that's the why behind it. Then there are also sometimes other types of treatments or other things that could clearly help your child that wouldn't be covered by Medicaid. So, that's why I keep it. I wouldn't let it go for that reason. But if you have, you know, really zero preference in doctors, and you don't mind if you switch around, and the complexity of your child's case isn't that complex, and you're okay with those things, then that might be something that you would consider of not having that private insurance. And then we have another question here that says, when we apply for Medicaid, do they look at your income? And yes, they absolutely do. And we're going to talk about that in a few minutes. But when we're talking about a child with a disability, so what you have to understand is they are looking at typically parental assets prior to the child turning 18. Once the child is over 18, they are not looking at the parental assets. They're looking at the child's assets. Now, you have to understand, there are like 102 Medicaid programs in the state of Texas, and there are Medicaid programs that do not look at the parental income. They look at the child's income, the minor child's income. It depends. Like for instance, and we'll talk about this in a minute, but the YES waiver is a waiver in the state of Texas that doesn't qualify. The child basically gets Medicaid if they're going to get the YES waiver, and it's based off of the kid's assets. So it is confusing, but the Health and Human Services website, if you look at Health and Human Services and Medicaid programs, you create a username and password, you put your information in there, and basically it will tell you all of the state programs that you may be eligible for at that time. And if it comes up that you're eligible for nothing, just know that you should do that again as soon as the child turns 18. Michelle, did you want to comment on that?
I do want to comment. I want to comment. It's more to the comment before about why bother with private insurance if you, and I think you'd answered it perfectly. I just want to bring something to everybody's attention, and you already mentioned it. There is the Medicaid has something called the HIP program, HIPP, not HIPAA, HIPP, and it's health insurance policy premium payment program or something like that. But if you have one family member on Medicaid, and you're getting your medical insurance through your employer, then you can go ahead and apply for HIP. And what HIP does is it will reimburse your medical insurance premium each month. So you have to set up an account and send the paperwork, and they reimburse you. It is not taxable to you. It's not income earned. It's a reimbursement. And why would the government do this? The government's policy is, and it's a cost effectiveness thing. They want you to maintain your private insurance and use Medicaid as the copay. And it's so important that they will reimburse your monthly premium to make sure that you maintain the private insurance. A lot of kids are very frail, maybe trach dependent or on medications that are so expensive per month, and it's more cost effective for the government to do it that way. So why not? Why not keep the private insurance, have the Medicaid, and have the reimbursement? And if I could just throw out one more thing that you mentioned, once you get well, maybe this is more an SSI Medicaid, but once you have your child on Medicaid, and Allison said, I think you said you've got one of your kids already on Medicaid and Medicare.
Yes.
It's a special benefits program that's available for pretty much for special needs kids only, for the most part. But if your child, if you can get your child on Medicaid, then they might be eligible for Medicare prior to the age of 65. Obviously, Allison's children are younger than 65. She's younger than 65. But Medicaid will pay the Medicare premium. So they'll have 100% medical insurance that's paid for by the government. Medicaid picks up the Medicare premium because Medicare is not free. We pay for Medicare. And Medicaid will pick up the Medicare copay. So.
Okay, and we have a few things in the chat box that I'm going to address some of them, and some of them will continue on with the slides. One parent said another reason why is the therapies. Your private insurance sometimes covers a lot more therapies than what Medicaid will, and that is very true when we've got somebody that's getting OT, PT, speech therapy, music therapy, all these different therapies. That is very, very true. So thank you for putting that there. And then we also had, if you have private insurance, Medicare and Medicaid, what is the sequence of the payout? So when you have private insurance and Medicaid, it's private insurance and then Medicaid. but when they get Medicare, and sometimes it depends on the carrier, but it's usually Medicare, then your primary insurance, and then Medicaid once they switch over to Medicare. And I have seen some variations of that, but that's basically what it looks like. But always just remember that Medicaid is always going to be that last payer. Let's see here. What happens when a child has the MDCP waiver that ends at 21? Do they lose Medicaid? No, they usually switch over to the Star Plus or the Star Plus waiver. You can look at that. We have a whole waiver presentation on our YouTube channel, but they don't just usually just drop off and they get nothing. They'll switch over to one of the other programs. Okay, let's see. What is necessary to keep an adult child on private insurance plan past their 26th birthday? This is a great question. And this is something that you're going to want to reach out to your HR department at your company. So if you have group health insurance through your company, you're going to reach out. You're going to advise that you have a disabled adult child whose disability started prior to age 26. You have proof of this. What are the forms that you need to fill out to keep them on your group health insurance? Most employers nowadays, I don't think it's the law that they have to allow this. I don't think so. But do you know about that, Michelle? Is it the law?
I think it's the law. Unless it was changed, it's the law. In Texas, it's the law. If you have an adult child with disabilities that onset in childhood, unless there was a change in the law, it was the law. Yes, it was the law. That's why they carry it. You have to pay the premium, but you can keep them on your private insurance. But
I've actually seen some, but I don't know if the employers are out of state or whatever. I've actually seen some that said they don't have this available or whatever. Maybe it's some of the smaller employers or things like that. But most of these employers, they have a form. You have to ask for it. Most of these employers don't put information out about this. It's something that you have to ask. And so if you don't ask, you might miss this. And you may want to ask about this too if you're planning on retiring from an employer and you're going to get retiree health benefits. You know, you want to make sure what happens to your disabled child's benefits upon retirement. And then if you get those retiree benefits and you die, does the child continue to get benefits, or do those benefits, go away? Those are all some good questions to ask. Can a disabled child keep private insurance after age 25? That's what we were just chatting about. So it's the magic age is after age 26. And typically, if you can prove that the disability started prior to that, then yes. If you are self-employed and have private insurance, can you file HIP? And I don't know the answer to that, Michelle.
No.
Okay.
Got to be employers. If you look at the HIP website, and Allison said something before, I'm going to emphasize it. When you're Googling any of these benefits questions, if you're Googling for them, if you're looking for HIP or anything, make sure that the website you click onto is Texas Health and Human Services. If you're out of state, I don't know, whatever your state Health and Human Services or whatever it's called in your state, but there's a lot of services that want you to pay them and they're going to help you with stuff. You don't need to pay anybody. Health and Human Services has great websites, great instructions, and make sure that you get that. I usually always confirm when I open up the page, when I'm Googling, look in the upper left corner and you'll see Tex HHS or something like that, Health and Human Services. And you can read up on that and explain it.
And we have a lot of questions, but I'm going to keep moving because some of our slides are going to really answer these questions, and then we'll come back to that. So, going on, number 2 here is benefits through the Social Security Administration. What are they? How do we access them? How to maintain eligibility for your child and not lose them? Knowing the difference between SSI and Medicaid and SSDI or RSDI and Medicare. So I'm gonna just kind of open this up to you, Michelle. Do you want to tackle this for, a little bit, and then I'll kind of chime in and we can tag team this.
Exactly. And let's give it an overview, because once again, we could speak for hours about any of these programs, but just in general, government benefits, you hear about government benefits or benefits. They are administered through the Social Security Administration, which is a federal agency. It's not state specific. Each state has their own administration as well, but don't worry about that now. There's different Social Security programs. Most are based on the amount of taxes, the Social Security and FICA and Medicare taxes that are taken out of our paychecks. Those go for when we retire for Social Security, the amount of retirement we get is based on the amount of taxes we've paid over the years. If a person who's employed becomes disabled and applies for SSDI, that's government disability insurance. SSDI is for people who have paid taxes because through work and become disabled, and the amount of monthly benefits that they'll get is based on the amount of taxes they've paid over the years. If a parent dies, there's a minor child, there's a death benefit, same thing. The amount paid is based on the taxes. When one gets SSDI, remember that's somebody who was employed and paying taxes through work. They can be eligible for Medicare. As I said earlier, Medicare, if you know this from your parents, if you have elderly parents, Medicare is not free. We pay a premium for Medicare. And we need the supplemental policies. So it's not free. There could be copays if you don't have the supplemental policies. What do you do? All of our special needs families, all the special needs kids who can't, because of the disability, are not able to work. So they won't be able to pay taxes. Not that they don't want to work, they can't. They're physically or mentally unable to support themselves through work. They are eligible for a government benefits program called SSI. I know you've all heard about it. There's a lot of misconceptions about it, but it's supplemental security income. And you make your child, you apply for, SSI. And when your child is approved for SSI, then Medicaid comes with it automatically. They're linked. And to apply for SSI, and this is once again, this is very general, but if your child is under the age of 18, the government through the Social Security Administration will look at your combined income. If you're divorced, they want to know the amount of child support pay. They look at the combined income. And if it's too high, if you're above the poverty level, then your child will not be eligible for SSI and Medicaid through SSI as a minor child. The minute your child turns 18 is the bingo age. That's when a child becomes an adult. That's emancipation. The Social Security Administration looks at that person as kind of a freestanding adult. It doesn't matter. The parents can be millionaires. The grandparents can be millionaires. But they look at the child's ability to support him. They, meaning the Social Security Administration, will evaluate the child's ability to support himself through work. And if he cannot, because of the disability, then he can be qualified for SSI, which is a monthly cash amount. And this year, Allison, I think it's up to $841.
$841 a month.
$841 a month. It's not taxable, and it's earmarked for food, clothing, shelter. Remember that, that's really important. And you get the Medicaid, and then Medicaid has the additional benefits that Allison and I have been talking about earlier in the presentation. But if you get your child on SSI, there will be evaluations through Social Security over the years, but it's a lifetime benefit. When one of the parents starts drawing Social Security, either retirement income or Social Security disability income, if a parent becomes disabled, the child will get an increased dollar amount each month and can be eligible for Medicare after a 24-month waiting period. There's some little glitches with that. If that happens to you, you need to know. You might get a letter that Medicaid is discontinued. You've got to immediately reapply. I'm throwing that out there. Keep that in the back of your memory. But back to SSI, because it's a lifetime benefit when one parent, and Social Security is always based it on the higher dollar earner of the two parents, but it can only be from one parent. But when the parent dies, then the child gets even more. We'll get up to 75% of what the parent was getting on Social Security retirement or Social Security disability. So it gets an increased dollar amount again. But once again, you got to watch that because of the Medicaid. You want to always maintain Medicaid eligibility, which you can if you have a special needs child and the disability onset prior to the age of 22. How's that for speed dating on Social Security?
That is good. So I'm going to slow it down a little bit because what I know is this is one of the most confusing topics, and people are most confused on this. And so again, I just want to reiterate like kind of the high points and the things that you hit. Number one, SSI is supplemental security income. This is for the disabled and indigent, those two, disabled and indigent. Okay. And so this is a means-based program. SSI, as she said, comes with Medicaid. If you get approved for SSI, Medicaid comes with it right away. Because a lot of times I hear people saying, my child gets Social Security, and they really don't get Social Security. They get SSI, Supplemental Security Income. And it's confusing. These terms are confusing, and I slow it down a little bit to talk about these confusing terms because our kids are disabled. It only makes sense that they would get Social Security disability, but that's not how it works. We have these weird terms that we throw around and they confuse people. So I want to talk about the RSDI. It's basically switching over to that retirement survivors disability. So Michelle was just talking about. So what she was talking about is what they call childhood disability benefits. For many, many years, the Social Security Administration called it disabled adult child. If your child's disability started prior to age 22, they could be considered under a parent's record for disability benefits. So basically what that means is, so your child that she mentioned doesn't work or isn't working, would never pay into that Social Security system, but basically they're saying they're a child that's going to be covered under that disability system under a parent's record. Okay. And so how this gets activated, if you're still actively working, you're not retired through the Social Security Administration as a parent. If you're still actively working and you're not disabled through the Social Security Administration, this benefit does not get activated for your child now. They've got a note on the record that your child's disability started prior to age 22. And basically what happens, when the trigger is pulled, is when either parent retires or goes on disability. That's when they make that switch over to where, like, for instance, this RSDI, let's say the parent's Social Security retirement is $4,000 a month. In that example, when you retire through the Social Security Administration, your disabled adult child would be entitled to $2,000 a month. So they'll basically switch over from SSI to RSDI. And because of the Pickle Amendment, to Michelle's point, they will continue to get Medicaid, even though, like, they may make too much now, they otherwise would be kicked off. Because of the Pickle Amendment, they'll continue to get Medicaid. But oftentimes, people are getting letters that they were kicked off of Medicaid and they just have to reapply. It's a mistake, and I've actually seen a lot more of this happen through the last 2 years of the pandemic. Have you seen that as well, Michelle?
We're seeing it a lot.
For sure. So the key thing with Medicare is it's, again, 24 months. So Medicare comes 24 months after qualifying for SSDI or RSDI. So here's the tricky thing. If you have a household where there's a caregiver in the household, maybe one parent did not work and that parent is drawing off of the other parent's Social Security, there are household maximums. And so we have specialized software at Consolidated Planning Group. We're nationally certified as Social Security advisors. We can help you with all of these calculations and all of these things and kind of get in the weeds with you on this. But a couple of things that we have seen through the years, and Michelle, you've probably seen this too. There are times, limited times, but where I've seen the individual be eligible for SSI, SSDI on their own record because they've worked some, maybe through Summer Earn and Learn or the Vocational Rehab, Texas Workforce Commission, and they're eligible for RSDI. I've seen that in a few cases. So if your child is working, some, very little, it is possible in the future that they could fall into that category. So I'm going to check the chat box for a second, and you can chat while I do that.
Can I say something? Because I know a lot of people in the audience have very high functioning kids, and their goal and their hope is that the child will work and be able to earn. Social Security does want people to work as much as possible, and your child can work up to probably maximum of 20 hours a week. Some attorneys that practice Social Security law say less, but let's say up to 20 hours a week and still maintain their benefits. The dollar amount of SSI that they get each month will probably be reduced. That's a whole nother discussion, but they can maintain their eligibility for the Medicaid. And it's not only maintaining their eligibility for the Medicaid, it's keeping them in the system so that these additional lifetime benefits will kick in when the time is appropriate. If your child's out of the system altogether, then you have to get them back into the system to get these additional benefits when you retire, or the death benefit, or the Medicare and Medicaid combination. And just to clarify one thing too, the Pickle Amendment, because I always say that to my clients and they look at me like, what? The Pickle Amendment is named for Senator Pickle from Texas. Senator Pickle and Senator Benson got this law passed years ago in Congress that if somebody was once eligible for and receiving Medicaid, but loses the Medicaid because of an increased monthly income, because once again, and I don't know if I made it clear enough, but Medicaid for the most part is linked to SSI, and SSI is because it's a means-based program. It's for people that are indigent themselves, that have less than $2,000 in combined assets and earn less than $841 a month. So you have to be basically indigent to be eligible for the SSI and the automatic Medicaid that comes with it. But when the adult child receives the increased income because a parent retired or because a parent has died, then they're automatically kicked off Medicaid. But our two senators, it was a whole big thing in Congress many years ago, but it's named after Senator Pickle, once again from Texas. They got this law passed, and it is called the Pickle Amendment, that if one was once eligible for and receiving Medicaid and loses it because of the increase in monthly income, they have to be reinstated. And that's what I'm saying, to keep in the back of your memory, because when the time comes for your child and you get that letter from Medicaid, once you're on Medicaid and Social Security, you will be inundated with mail. Allison can testify to that. There's so much stuff in here. If you're like I am, you go, oh, I'll get to that later. I'll look at it later. It sits in the pile. If you have a child on these benefits, make sure you check every piece of mail that comes in, because you might get a notice that something's going on. They're evaluating your child, or they're looking at the Medicaid, and you have so many days to appeal whatever their decision was, and you've got to get that paperwork in on a timely basis.
And that's something that people, put on the shelf a lot. Those letters are stressful, they're long, and they're, hard to read, and sometimes cause a lot of anxiety for people just seeing that they have a mail from them in their mailbox. But definitely read them. Don't let those dates pass. And so we do have a lot of good questions. Somebody said that they're confused on what RSDI is. Basically, SSDI is the worker, so you're paying into that system as an employee. You're paying into that SSDI system. RSDI stands for Retirement Survivors Disability Income. So if you have a child that is covered under childhood disability benefits because their disability started prior to age 22. So we've thrown around some ages around here, and I want to clarify that. So health insurance, you can keep your child on your health insurance until age 26. That's the law. That's the federal law. But most employers have a program that if your child has a disability that started in childhood, that you can continue their health insurance past age 26. So I want to clarify that. The magic age for SSI is that the child's disability started prior to age 22. And it doesn't mean you had to apply before then. So if you feel like you've missed the deadline because your child's 23 now, you didn't miss the deadline. You just have to prove that their disability started prior to age 22. And the reason you want to do this is so that way you maintain their eligibility to be considered a disabled adult child under your record, which is going to entitle them to the 50% of your Social Security when you retire, or your SSDI if you go on disability benefits. Also, retirement survivor disability income also comes at the death of a parent. So we see survivor benefits if we had a situation where one of the parents died as well. So that's where the RSDI comes in. And again, SSDI and RSDI eligibility for Medicare comes after 24 months, 2 years, whereas SSI and Medicaid come immediately. So I just wanted to clarify that. There was somebody else. I'm just, can you create a lease?
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Sure,
No,
go ahead.
Just one quick clarification, because I get a phone call like this from time to time. This benefits package, the RSDI, just think if somebody has a 30-year-old who's been in a car wreck, or a 25-year-old that's been in a car wreck and becomes disabled, that adult child cannot get a benefit based on the parent's earnings record. That's not available. The child will get the amount of Social Security disability based on his own record, his own amount of taxes that he's paid in. But if you have a child where the disability onset in childhood and the Social Security Administration defines that as anything under the age of 22, then your child can be eligible for the RSDI. I just get phone calls about it a lot. You probably do too, Allison. So I wanted to clarify.
Yes. RSDI also includes a step-parent income. Yes, it can. It could be a parent. It could be either the bio parents or the step parents. I've actually seen it be the grandparent when a grandparent has had custody or a ward of, from a guardianship perspective. So yes, it can be a step parent. There was another question I wanted to hit on. We clarified what RSDI is. Should your kid, this is a great question. Should your kid not work at all before applying for SSI? No, it's okay if they work, but what you need to know is right now it's $13.50 for the Social Security Administration. What they count as substantial gainful employment is $13.50 gross per month. So when they're applying for SSI, they should not be earning more than $13.50 gross per month. They should not have more than $2,000 assets in their name. If they are working and getting more than $13.50 gross per month, it's automatically going to be denied. If they have more than $2,000 in their name, it's automatically going to be denied unless that money is sitting in other accounts that we're going to talk about in a moment. But basically, it's okay if they're working. And also, there's two things, and we have entire presentations on this, so I don't want us to get off, where we don't get to the other points that we want to make today. But the Social Security Blue Book is an impairment guide. It's the impairment guide that the Social Security Administration uses to determine the degree of eligibility, basically based off of the disability. So they have it categorized by neurological issues, cardiac issues, mental health issues. And the Blue Book is online. It's free. You can look at it. You can, if you type in Social Security Blue Book, it is going to come up, and you can look up your loved one and every ailment diagnosis they have. And I encourage people to do this. I know it seems extra, but know what they're looking for. What is it that you have to prove for your child to be considered disabled? And I take it one step further, people. I'm going to go ahead and look at my doctor's records and see what the records say, because sometimes the records are wrong. Sometimes they make mistakes. But if I'm, I can read what the Blue Book says I have to prove to them. I can read this, 2 or 3 page summary of records of the medical doctor. And can I see in my child's record that it meets that criteria? And if I can't, then I'm going to call the doctor and I'm going to say, hey, listen, we're applying for SSI and here's the evidence that needs to be supplied. And when I read the record, it doesn't really clearly state what is going on. And I need some clarity in this. We're not asking them to lie. We're asking them to make sure that the record is clear, that it clearly communicates what the disability is, what the limitations are, and those types of things. So that's the Social Security Blue Book. The Social Security Red Book, that you can download this, it's a PDF, and that is going to talk about everything you ever wanted to know or don't want to know about working while getting SSDI, RSDI, and what you can and can't do, and basically how not to mess that up. Someone else said in the chat box, which was good, about can you submit a rent or a fair share agreement or something along those lines? The answer is yes, and you should. If your child is basically paying you rent to live in your home, say $500 a month is a good number that I use. You just basically send a simple rent agreement. We have templates for that. And they're going to increase their SSI benefit to the full benefit amount. Because remember what Michelle said, SSI is for food, clothing, and shelter. That's what that's for. So when your child, if you have a rent agreement and your child is paying rent, say $500 a month, You let the Social Security Administration know that, and they're going to increase that benefit because they're going to take that that 1/3, that reduction off of the record for that. Do you have anything you want to add to that, Michelle?
I want to add something about applying for SSI, because once again, one applies for SSI after the child's 18. Do not apply before, because they're going to look at your combined, Social Security will look at your combined income. But I have seen, Allison, and I know you have too, I've seen people denied because all they put on the application, what's the disability? Autism. Well, autism, as we know, is a spectrum. You really have to, I saw somebody with spina bifida. And this poor baby had so many things going on with her because of the spina bifida. It was a pretty severe case. She was denied because the parents just put that and thought, well, Social Security will know what that is. No, they don't. They get thousands of applications, and they don't know your child. You have to really flesh out. And this, what triggered this thought, Allison, is what you were saying, is read the Blue Book. Look at your doctor's letters, your doctor's evaluations. What you have to show is, here's the disability, or I always like to say a combination of chronic persistent disabilities, because it's how they play in with the other, how one affects the other, because it's usually multiple. There's usually multiple things going on. Don't forget to include how verbal or nonverbal your child is, for example, or if there's anxiety disorder, whatever it is. But then you really have to explain why it's difficult for your child to support himself through work. And if you look at that Blue Book, it'll spell it out. If you have these characteristics that are symptoms of the disability, and then it affects their ability to socialize. It affects their ability to understand, to read information, to retain information, to repeat it. Can your child multitask? And details like that. So really talk to an expert on Social Security like Allison or somebody at her company to help you flesh out the application. It's worth it, because you want your child to be approved first go around.
Somebody said, if I submit a rent agreement, do I need to collect put the rent on my taxes? I jokingly say we're not tax advisors and we don't play one on TV. Andy Hardwick with the Social Security Administration has basically said that if you are charging your child rent as opposed to the fair share, yes, then you would file that on your taxes. If you're charging your child the fair share, and in the eyes of the Social Security Administration, fair share is housing costs, so rent or mortgage, utilities, and food costs added together, divided by the number of people in the household. So in some situations where a family's house is paid off, the math works fine to do a fair share agreement as opposed to a rental agreement. But in other situations where maybe it's a household of 3, the math doesn't make sense. So they need to do a rental agreement, and we can talk deeper about that. So one of the areas, so basically when we're talking about a means-based test and you can't have more than $2,000 in the individual's name, or they're going to disqualify for Medicaid and not qualify for SSI, one of the places that they can have money as a special needs trust. This is a place that is allowed by the Social Security Administration. And so we'll have another presentation with Michelle where we're going to go deep and wide on the different types of trust. But give us a quick overview on the special needs trust and what they need to know about that, Michelle.
Yes, once again, this is federal law. There's also state law that pertains to it. But the federal government, because once again, the basic benefits package comes from the federal government. So as Allison and I have both said, for your child to be eligible, you're over the age of 18-year-old child to be eligible for the government benefits, for the SSI plus Medicaid, he or she has to be indigent, and the government defines indigent. Income is less than $841 a month and less than $2,000 in combined assets. Don't forget to talk to your parents. Did they set up an UGMA account, an UTMA account? 529 plans, are exempt. They're for educational purposes. And besides you, the parent or the owner, the child is the beneficiary. So that's a detail there. But educational funds are exempt. Some things are exempt. But you have to look at combined assets. The government's policy, but the government has, I don't want to say but, I want to say at the same time, the government recognizes the government benefits only cover so much. And the government's policy is, we want to ensure that your child has some quality of life money too. And that's to pay for additional medical needs. It can pay for anything. It's very flexible, pretty much. It can pay for almost anything. It can pay for vacations. It can pay for a better wheelchair. It can pay for eyeglasses. It can pay for tuition if you send your child to a special school. It can pay for cable TV, a cell phone, clothing. It can pay for things that will provide, it can pay for care provider services. It can pay, although this changes from time to time, it can pay to bring somebody to visit your child. If you have another child who lives in another state or is in school in another state, it can pay for them to come home to see the sibling who has disabilities. You can set aside money for your child through your will, or sometimes grandparents have money. Or I have a lot of people that call and say, I have a brother who never married, never had kids, and he's got $50,000 for my son. Well, great. But if your son gets the money outright, he will lose his benefits because he has over the $2,000 asset cap. But as long as the money is deposited into this thing called a special needs trust, and I'm going to explain what that is, then your child can be fully eligible for maximum on the benefits and have some money for the quality of life things. So what is a special needs trust? And what does an attorney have to do? And what does a financial planner have to do? The attorney drafts the trust document and drafts your will, directing any money that you're leaving for this child to the special needs trust. There's what we call the third party trust. Let me back up. The trust document gives instructions for how the money is to be managed and who will manage it. That's the trustee. The trustee gets great power. So you can be the trustee of your child's special needs trust. Let's say Granny wants to give you $50,000 or $10,000 or $250,000, whatever it is. You put it in a special needs trust. You are the trustee. You're the child's parent, or the parents can be co-trustees. You decide how the money will be used for your child, and you have to report to Social Security and interact with Social Security. You as the trustee get trustee powers or authority. You can say, I am going to choose or appoint a money manager, Charles Schwab, Vanguard, Edward Jones. I'm not particular to any of them. They're just popping up, Fidelity. And I'm going to put the money, this money that we receive from my mother, in an account, but it's going to be called a special needs trust account. The special needs trust has certain things you have to look at. There's a lot of logistical things, but just briefly, it has to have its own federal tax ID, its own EIN, employer identification number, because your child's benefits are administered through his Social Security number. You have it under a separate federal tax ID, so the government doesn't count it as your child's resource. It's a sole beneficiary trust. It can only be used for the benefit of your child with disabilities. You can't use it for other people in the family. Who cares? Who will find out? The Social Security Administration will. That's a whole nother topic. But it's a sole benefit trust. The money is there for the sole benefit of your child with disabilities. And you, but it's not counted as his resource. I always think of a trust as kind of like a business entity. The trust owns the money for the benefit of your child. A third party trust means, and you always hear about payback trust, and people don't want a payback trust. A third party trust is when the money comes from a third party. It can be you, it can be your parents or your brother that's got money, or whoever. The money goes directly from that person, even if it's you, through your will, or you decide to set money aside, into the trust for the benefit of your child. There's no Medicaid payback. I'm going to explain what that is. Provision in the trust. It's not required. You name the remainder beneficiaries. The trust and the trust document is governed by Social Security guidelines. One of the guidelines is the trust has to be in place for your child's life. So on your child's death, you name the remainder beneficiaries. If you have other kids, it comes back to your own kids, or it can go to nieces and nephews, or it can go to charity. It's your money, you decide. What if your child gets money himself? And I work with a lot of trusts like this because a lot of people have lawsuit settlements. They were injured in a car wreck or on a job site. There was an industrial accident, or there was something happened in a hospital or with a doctor. There was a medical malpractice claim, and there's a recovery through a lawsuit. That is considered your child's money, the injured person's money. The government's policy, once again, is if you have your own assets, you're going to lose your benefits. At the same time, the government goes, well, you got this money, even if it's millions, you got this money from a lawsuit settlement or a direct inheritance, somebody didn't do their planning, or child support. We'll talk about that in a second. Or child support. You got to be careful with the ongoing child support. And the government's policy is we'll let you keep your benefits and we'll allow you to have this pot of money to give you quality of life things. And I'll give you some examples. On condition on the child's death, the child can be 80 when he dies, 50, however old the child is, 30, however old the child is when he dies. Medicaid has to be notified, and Medicaid can seek reimbursement for the amount that Medicaid has spent on medicals on your child from the time the child started receiving Medicaid. I had a client where the child was severely injured in a car crash when the girl was a toddler. She was born fine, severely injured. And they finally had a lawsuit. They sued the manufacturers of the toddler car seat, which collapsed on the child and caused the horrific injuries. And they put it into a court-ordered special needs trust, and it had to have the Medicaid payback because it was the daughter's money. She was the injured party in the lawsuit, even though she was a minor child. And the mother sat here when we did the guardianship, when she turned 18, she said, I'm fine with the Medicaid payback because we had capped out on our private insurance. We were going to have to file for bankruptcy because we had capped out on the insurance, and the trust pays for everything. It pays for my full-time nanny. It paid for all the accommodations in the house. The trust pays for the van. The trust pays for all the therapies. So you can use the money while it's in trust, but on the death of the beneficiary, the money has to be reimbursed. Medicaid puts a claim on it. Medicaid will tell you how much they want to be reimbursed. And if there's money left after that, then it goes to the remainder beneficiaries. So
I want to chime in here, and we're going to move on to our next one, because this is an important thing. Someone said a relative first has to specify in the will that the money will go to the special needs trust. What if the relative did not specify that before their death? Can the child get the money directly? And kind of that's basically and not affect their benefits. First things first, one thing that I want to say, and we're going to kind of get to this. Your beneficiaries matter. Okay, so you can have a will, but when you got life insurance contracts and annuities and other 401ks and everything like that, it's what your beneficiary is listed as where the money goes. So sometimes people have a misconception that if they have these wills and trusts in place, that it's just going to supersede everything that they've ever done and it's going to handle everything. But your named beneficiary on any policies you have, any bank accounts you have, any annuities, stocks, bonds, mutual funds, all of that kind of stuff, your beneficiary is where the money basically goes, and you can change that. But that is a good question, because we see a lot of times grandparents accidentally didn't know. They love their grandkids, aunts and uncles, cousins, whoever, accidentally leave a sum of money to your loved one. And basically what happens, Michelle, you just got to go get a court order, and that's where it goes to a first party trust. Is that right?
Yeah, but it's a little tricky because under the Social Security regulations for special needs trust, only certain people can set up a special needs trust. A parent can, a grandparent, a guardian ad litem. Well, if you're not in the court system already, you're gonna have to open up a guardianship, and you're getting this money coming in and you don't want the child to lose the benefits. There's only so many days that Social Security allows you to report it. The ARC of Texas, and I know some of you are in other states, has a first party special needs trust. Once again, that's the payback trust. If your child gets a direct inheritance, either through a beneficiary designation, which wasn't changed and it goes directly to the person with disabilities and on benefits, or through a will, you might be able to use the ARC of Texas without going through the court system. That will be another discussion.
Okay.
I do think we should talk about guardianship, if you don't mind, for a minute.
Yes. Well, I tell you what we're going to do. We're going to, because we've got about 6 minutes left, and we're going to kind of stop on the questions for a few, but we will download questions and we'll get back with you on any questions that we weren't able to answer. We will definitely do that. The Medicaid waiver programs, we're not going to spend a ton of time on this. the special needs trusts are very, very important. The first party, the third party special needs trust, that's very important because, again, it's the money that you can have an unlimited amount of money in these trusts. It's not limited like the ABLE account, which we're going to talk about in a second. So unlimited amount of money can be in these special needs trusts, and these are areas where the money is not going to be counted against you. Those UGMA and UTMA accounts, we don't see them very often anymore, but they switch over to the kids, basically the kids' asset. So they turn over, whereas the 529 plans don't become the child's asset, but those UGMAs and those UTMA accounts, you hit the nail right on the head. So if you have UGMA or UTMA accounts, these are things that you may want to be considering other options for. You may want to be considering moving into an ABLE account. There's other options, but just know that those particular accounts are particularly problematic. So as far as the Medicaid waiver programs, the waivers, we had a complete presentation on this last week, but these are basically the waivers in the state of Texas, and these are the waivers that we were talking about. They're designed to waive off the cost of care for an individual with a disability. This is why we want our children to stay Medicaid qualified. Even if you're affluent, there's millions of dollars in the trust. We still want to maintain their eligibility because that Medicaid is required for them to be able to be on one of these waivers. These are also called the interest list. The state of Texas has a very, very long waiting list. It's suggested that it's about 17 years right now. We definitely do have families that are getting these waivers, and when they do come through, they are good. But just know that these are out there, and our other presentation can help you about getting on these interest lists. But this is basically, we're going to send these slides later today, but these are basically the numbers you call. This website, you put your zip code in, and it tells you who your local intellectual disability authority is, and your local authorities where you're going to get on these lists. So if your child isn't on the list, you can put them on. It doesn't cost you anything to put them on. You don't have to prove their eligibility to get them on. You prove later that they're eligible when they come up on the list. So the best thing you can do is make sure that your children or your child are on these particular lists. I think one of the things we've talked a lot about, and I think that we're going to run out of time for today. But I think knowing the difference between a special needs planner and a special needs attorney, I like to very simplify that of saying that we're the money and the money in the right buckets, the Social Security analysis, all of that, and they're the paper, they're the legal documents, they're the special needs trust, the guardianship, the supported decision-making wills, powers of attorney, healthcare power of attorney, all of those legal documents and those things that you need, that's the attorney. So she gets calls all the time doing what we do, asking her to do what we do, and we get calls asking us to do what she does. But the truth of the matter is your situation is specialized. You need both. I like to say I'm not a fan of a do-it-yourselfer on this kind of stuff because as we've heard, and we're even running out of time today, these situations are complicated. And one little mistake can make the difference on whether or not your child's going to qualify for benefits or not qualify for benefits. So when you're thinking about planning, really think about your vision of how you hope things will look for your special needs child, but as well as your own future. It's not just them. We spend our lives 30 or 40 years, working. And if you have a child that's going to need care the rest of their life, not just the rest of yours, we've got to have some balance and some respite and those types of things put in place as well. We are really out of time, Michelle. I think what we're going to do, we will have, I think we just need to schedule a follow-up Zoom because we've kind of touched on some really big topics here. But I think the biggest thing here, guardianship, this is something that can start 6 months prior to the child turning 18. You can start that process, right, Michelle?
Yes, in Texas.
And so do you want to give us just a quick thing about the differences of the supported decision making, or do you want to hit on that a little bit?
I can, but can I just say one thing? And I know we're running out of time. I want to say something about financial planners, if you don't mind. First of all, a lot of financial planners contact me. They tell me that they're special needs financial planners, or I have clients say they're already working with somebody that they like and who's done well in the investments. And they go, well, he knows about special needs. No, there's very few financial planners I've found really, my experience is limited, of course, but there aren't many people like Allison and her company, because I don't think there's really special needs financial planning. Financial planning is how your money is invested. But financial planning like Allison and her company can do is different, because Allison is very aware of all the government benefits. You can hear this. She knows the various government benefits. She knows what they pay, what they will pay, and then can sit with you and project and say, well, let's say you have 2 kids or 3 kids or just 1 kid, whatever. You have this many children, you have to plan for your own retirement. What can you expect from the benefits? What will the benefits cover? And then we can come in and plug in, correct me if I'm wrong, but this is what I understand. Then we can plug in how much you need to set aside for child with disabilities who will always be dependent. That's a big difference than planning for your other kids. Because and one mistake I think is a mistake. A lot of parents come when I'm doing wills, they say, I'm not leaving anything to my other children. They're fine and they can work. Their brother has disabilities. And I always go, no, you don't want to do that. Don't do that. You don't know what your other children's needs will be. You don't want them to resent their child. They won't resent him. I say, you're not going to be here. So there's a lot of nuances and delicacies with this. And it's really important to talk to people that work in this area. And just real briefly, we really don't have time, and it's better for another discussion. Guardianship is one thing. Powers of attorney.
Guardianship is a whole topic in itself, and we definitely have webinars that live on our YouTube channel for that. But so I think what we say is, kind of empowering yourself and educating yourself on these topics. Don't feel overwhelmed. I mean, and if you have felt overwhelmed, you're not alone. These webinars have been powered by, I eat, sleep, and breathe this. I do this personally and professionally. And when I went through this transition time with my own daughter, and I'm going through it again with my other child, it's a lot. It's a lot to take in. So if you're feeling that way, that's why we put these webinars together, and kind of why we go deeper and wider. We have entire presentations on ABLE accounts and these future care cost estimates. And Michelle, that's what you were hitting on. If we have a child that's going to need care for the rest of our life, and we need to spend 25 to 35 years in retirement, how much money do we need for the future care of our child? If our child's going to live 20 to 30 years after we're gone, we can help you do all of those things. And so if those are things that have been on your radar, or just exactly how and when to pull the trigger on your Social Security, being National Social Security advisors with the specialized software that we have, we can definitely help you with all of those things. Folks, we're out of time today, and we went over a little bit. We are going to partner with Michelle again, and we're going to go deeper and wider on each of these individual topics that we hit on today. So that way we can get those questions answered, and you can learn more about each one of those topics. But the big takeaway on the special needs trust, the first party, third party special needs trust, ABLE accounts, those are the areas where you can have money over the $2,000, still qualify for SSI and Medicaid. That is the big takeaway. And you can move money into those accounts. That is basically legally, it's a legal move that will maintain your eligibility. So thanks everyone for being here today. Thank you for your awesome questions. Michelle, thank you for your time, your expertise. You're really awesome, and definitely a legend in the greater Houston area. I'm going to get back to the front here for our her contact information. So if you are needing legal help, please reach out to Michelle. She can definitely help you if you've got questions about special needs trust, wills, powers of attorneys, those types of things. Most of the people we talk to have either no will or trust, or a very outdated will or trust, and they need to look at those again. So if that's you, reach out to Michelle. If you've got questions and you need guidance, and you really don't know if you need guardianship, but you need to talk to a professional to tell them about your unique situation as it relates to that, certainly reach out to Michelle. Thanks everyone for being here. It's been a
Thank
pleasure,
you.
and we look forward to seeing you again soon. Take care.
Thank you. Thank you.